Welcome to the beginner tutorial for Pixquare. It's a really good pixel art app for iPad and iPhone. This video is going to focus on the basic tools that I use every day in order to create pixel art, different customization options to really make this app work for you, and even how to make animations and tile sets. My name is Andrew Robinson. Normally I'm posting over on my own channel, Robinson Pixels, but today I'm working directly in a collaboration with Pixquare. I'll be working on my iPad, which I've got right over here, so let's get into it. Now once you're in the app, of course, I've got a lot of stuff in here already because I use this app all the time, but this is the basic idea of it. As you can see, you can create folders. You can also see the individual files if this is where you've got them saved to. A lot of little icons everywhere that you can familiarize yourself with, including these down here. Specifically, there's even a Discord button down there as well. There's a really big community out there, so if you get stuck on the app and don't know what to do, it's a good place to turn to for help. And there's also a link to the website with the full user guide too. Now before I get into it, I'm gonna hit this settings gear up here so we can see what all you've got. Some general stuff like where you're storing it, whether or not you want it to auto backup. You can even change your theme. Now the default is what I'll be sticking to throughout the video, but there are some other really interesting ones. Elegance here is a nice darker version. If you're into purple, there's one called Purple Pixel. You can even hit this colors button and set up your own themes as well. I'll go ahead and throw out there this app is compatible with the Bluetooth mouse if that's what you've got. So I'll be using that for parts of the video and using my fingers for other parts. Just depends on what feels the most natural in the moment. Now if you hit this plus button up here, you can create a new folder, you can create new artwork, you can even import. And not only can you import Pixquare specific files, you can even import Sprite and Photoshop too. And you can directly work with these file types in Pixquare. Just know if you do that, you won't have access to all the features like autosave and time-lapse recordings. And auto backup is also disabled as well. Now let's go ahead and create a new artwork. Now I went with 64 by 64 because it's a pretty good little size for us to be able to just mess around on the screen. If you're brand new to pixel art, you may want to start with something even smaller, but I figured for these purposes, it'll be just fine. I always start with a transparent background, that way I don't accidentally put my characters or whatever on the same layer as a color. We'll talk about layers in a bit. A lot of different color palette options down here that you can use. There's also a little time-lapse checkbox. I keep that checked all the time. Personally, as a YouTuber, I find that to be the most useful thing because it can record your art as you're drawing it, minus all the times you zoom in and out and flip and rotate and all that kind of stuff that makes it not very pleasant to the eye. You don't have to worry about that. Create. And here we are. So you start out with this kind of standard checkerboard pattern if you've got that transparency turned on. You can pinch the screen to zoom in and out. I even went into the settings and set mine to where I could rotate it like this. If you want to know about the settings, it's this little gear icon up here. Now I'm not going to go through every setting at once because obviously that would be way too much to do. But I do recommend once you're familiar with the app, going ahead through and familiarizing yourself with what you can. But for the rotations, you go under Canvas, Canvas Rotation. Let's turn it on and off. All right, let's get out of here. You've got a lot of different options here at the top, buttons kind of everywhere, collapsible items and stuff down here, which we'll talk about later. This one right here is my favorite. It's called the Handy tool, and we'll get into that in a bit. There's even tabs up here if you want to be able to open more than one thing at once and switch between them. Let's go ahead and start drawing. First, let's talk about selecting your color, and there's a few different ways to do that. First is this little button up here, and you can go through and select all these different levels of saturation for your color and brightness. You can change the hue with this little slider, and there are other options too if you prefer the other setups. I really like HSV as that first little option. Second way to select a color is using the color palette, which is down here. And this is the palette that was defaulted for me earlier, but you can even add more colors onto it. Like if I click this little plus button, it'll add in that green that we had up there. You can also use an eyedropper using this little eyedropper icon up here. And there's one other method that I'll show you in a bit. First, let's grab the brush tool. Looks like a pencil. And if you've got a keyboard connected, you can even set up different shortcuts. So if I hit B on my keyboard, now I've got the brush tool selected. Again, that's in the settings. If you go up to settings, you can go into keyboard, and then there's a lot of different options in here. Let's select a darker color so we can actually see it, and maybe a prettier color. I'm gonna start drawing on here. And you see I've got it pretty big, and that's because of this slider over here. This controls the size. So you can have it really big. You can also change it to be really small. Also, I don't know what this is. Maybe I'm working on a swan right now. Okay, anyway, this other slider is for opacity. So if you do that lower, you can see it's a slightly transparent color. And let me zoom in here. As you color over, it becomes darker and darker because you're actually adding to that color that's slightly invisible. And I actually do use that feature constantly. When I'm drawing, I like to have a low opacity brush so I can kind of draw in a little picture. We're just doing a stick man right now because I'm on the spot. And then I can go through later and use darker opacity to draw with more detail. Let's add another color to the guy. Maybe some green here. And we'll do some little lines on him. Now that other method I mentioned, if you want to select a different color again, of course right now I've got this green, but I can hold down and now I've got black. Yay! You can hold with the pencil too. I don't know. My brain likes to hold with the finger to select and then with the pencil to color. It's just what I do. You can adjust all that in the settings. Now, let's say you made a mistake with what you're doing because, well, you're drawing something that looks like this. You've got undo and redo buttons over here that you can click. Honestly, I don't think I've ever used those. I always undo with a double tap with 2 fingers at once. You see, you can do this and undo, undo, undo. And you can do 3 fingers to redo. Now, if you click on any of the tools, you actually do get more options. So let's click on that pencil again, and you can see there's a ton of stuff in here. It can be a little intimidating at first, but just try things out real slow. And some of the options are kind of fun, like you can switch over and do like a spray tool. Ooh. Ooh. Pixel Perfect, which is useful if you have a hard time with drawing perfect curves and stuff. This helps you to not get double pixels in the corner. If I turn that back off, well, then I might end up with little pixels like that, which in general in pixel art is something you don't want. So that's pretty neat. Stabilizer is very similar. This watercolor option, you're usually gonna wanna leave checked. Now, when your pencil is at 100% opacity, no matter what, it'll do the same thing, whether it's on or off. But if it's on, if you've got a low opacity pen, you can see it kind of blends the colors together. It's very nice. If you have that off, then it just does it right over that. And remember, that's only for low opacity brush. A full opacity brush is gonna draw over everything, no matter what. This guy looks like he got hit by a truck, I'm sorry. There's also a pressure sensitivity option, which if you use that, that is regarding the size of your pencil. So let's go just like size 3. So if you go lightly right here, you see it's only 1 pixel, but if I press hard, now it's bigger. That's kind of a nice feature. You can even do different dithering patterns as well, which I find useful when I'm doing stuff like shading the sky. But for now, let's do maybe some yellow on this. And you can see it's based on how hard you press your pencil as to what pattern you get. And there are different pattern selections in here. Now, despite how much I love this beautiful piece of art we've got right here, let's erase it. If you hit that eraser, you've got same deal as before. You've got different sizes you can choose from. You've got different opacity if you just want to slightly erase your picture and make it a little transparent. Kind of cool. You can even double tap your pencil to go back and forth. If you ever worked in Procreate, it's the same deal. So I'm drawing and now I'm erasing. Next tool we'll talk about is the line tool, which is mostly self-explanatory, but there's a couple of cool features I want to show you. So with it in its default way, you can draw a line like that, or like that, or like that, whatever. But sometimes with pixel art, you don't necessarily want sort of ugly lines. And this right here, that's an ugly line. Nobody wants straight diagonal and then a couple over and then straight diagonal again, unless you have a very specific purpose for it. So you can actually go in here and turn on perfect angle, and now, I can make it only do 2, or I can make it do straight, or 1. It's just a nice way to keep your lines at the good angles that you probably want to draw at without too much hassle. And this part I think is really neat. I've used this before. You can change it from a straight line to a curvy line, which in your brain you're like, yeah, I can draw a curvy line. I know what shapes are, but watch. I gotta erase some of this. Sorry, picture. I'm gonna do like a straight line right here, and then it's pretty neat. Watch this. You can grab it and drag it, and now I made a curve. Say I want to draw a different line over here, and then curve that in. Looky here, and now I've drawn a banana. In fact, let's make it more of a banana. Let's skip ahead to the bucket fill, which mine is set to gradient, but normally it's a bucket. We'll switch over to yellow and fill it in. A few different options that are important with that banana. the banana. A few different options are important with the bucket fill. Most important to me is this continuous option. So what continuous does is it recolors only what you're selecting. So let's say if I was coloring, here, let me add some more yellow so I can demonstrate. I've got a big yellow blob there. Now, let's say I want to turn this stuff greenish. So with continuous on, if I recolor my banana, it only changed the colors that are actually connected to each other. However, if I turn that off, that'll recolor every instance of yellow. Pretty handy to have. You can even use the bucket fill to do a gradient instead, which you saw I had that selected earlier. So if you hit this and go to fill mode, change it to a gradient, you can actually generate a gradient. So I've got this green already selected. Let's make it go to this color. Let's do only like 6 colors. There we go. And I'm gonna hit add, and I'm gonna turn on perfect angle. And I like to actually do dithering on mine, so it looks kind of like a sky. Let's do this. Ooh, look at that. Let's go back on this little list here into some shapes that you can draw. You've got ovals and rectangles, different options here, and you can even turn it into perfect ratios, so perfect square, perfect circle. What I think is the most useful is actually you can select whether you want it corner corner or center corner. So let me just demonstrate that. If we did corner corner, and I'm gonna draw a circle here. So you see I go from the corner in the top left to the bottom corner. The only thing that's not good about doing corner corner, if you have a specific area that you want it to go to, you kind of have to be a good guesser at how far to draw it. Whereas if you do center corner, it goes from the middle outward. So if you have a specific spot, then you know where you want it to be. Pretty cool space scene here. Then if we just do some like white, do some like little bitty ones. Ooh, look. Cool. Now this up here is your selection tool, which you can use a lot of different options. This first one is the lasso selection. So if you want to just draw your shape for what you're selecting, that's how you do that. The ones I use most often are the box one, lasso, and the magic wand. Now there's a little checkbox here for quick selection. I normally leave that off on mine because what that does is if you double tap a corner, it'll kind of square it out for you, but we're gonna leave it off. Now all these options are actually telling Pixquare what you want to do with your selection tool. Most often you're probably gonna use this first one, which is additive to select what you're doing, and then subtractive. So let's say if I had already made a selection here and I'm like, I didn't want to select that corner, you can change that to subtractive. Okay, and then make the shapes the way you want it to. Now, you may have already noticed, but once you've made a selection, you've got new options on the side over here. You've got deselect, and that of course deselects it. You can undo to put it back if you wanted it. You can invert to select everything else. So now it looks like that's selected, but in fact it's everything but that. You can also clear it, and you can also, of course, copy, and then you'll have an option to paste. Now, as soon as you paste, it switches your tool to the move tool up here. And of course you can use that to, well, move. So there's that new moonish shape that we made. Now, if you don't have anything selected and you hit that move tool, you'll actually move your whole layer at once. So you gotta be careful about that. Now, move also lets you do a few things. It defaults to scaling, which of course is where you can grab these little things on the corner and resize your art that you wanna make. But you can also switch it over to skewing, and skewing lets you skew it like that. And perspective. So if you do this, you might want it to look like something on a 3D plane going into the distance. You can also rotate by grabbing this at the top. Now, one thing about pixel art is when you rotate stuff around, it kind of messes up the corners pretty often, and that is just part of the way that it goes. Now, Pixquare does have a couple of features to help with that. You can actually turn on snapping, and that'll make it snap when you're pretty close to an angle that you likely want. So let's do that. Let's say I want a 45. You see it hangs there at 45 for a second, and at 90. Yeah. So that's really useful. But even more useful than that little box that keeps popping up is because I have precise move on. And I like that a lot. What you can do is you can set whatever angle you want it to rotate by and just click it to make it do it. So let's say if we want it to move 45 degrees, bam, I did it. Another 45, ooh, nice. There's also a step feature right here, but we'll talk about that more when we get to animation, because that's where I feel like it's most beneficial. All right, let's round out all the rest of these options up here. This option right here is to save presets if you have specific layouts for the tools that you want to keep using. And the extra little triple dot button here brings up a whole host of other options. Now, some of these are fairly advanced, so we're not going to do like a deep dive onto them, but I am going to talk about my favorite things. First off is color replace. Now, color replace is really useful if you have multiple frames of animation or multiple layers, because you're able to make it go on all of them at once, and that is fantastic. But let's say I want to change the black to white or to that weird reddish color. We can say apply, and we did it. My other favorite option is to go up to color adjustment, and you can mess around with the hue and the saturation if you want stuff to be more or less saturated, which is more of a grayscale. You can even change the value if you want to make something darker or lighter, and the alpha affects how transparent the image is. And what's even more handy is that if you have a selection going on, so let's go select that wand tool and select all of our red. Now I can go up into color adjustment and find a color that doesn't clash so much. So maybe let's do like a darker, less saturated bluish color. Pretty fun stuff. All right, now let's talk about this handy tool that we've got here. And the handy tool is fully customizable with what you want it to do. But for me, I only have a few things on mine, and it's the ones that I go to constantly. So one thing that artists tend to want to do is actually flip their images from left to right so they can tell whether or not it looks good at all angles. I can just hold my mouse or my pencil on this thing and drag it in different directions. So down here is where I've got it set to flip horizontally, and that helps you just at a glance know, oh, did I mess anything up? Which when I flip this, it makes it more obvious that I've got this chunk of that moon kind of ugly down there. So then I can go fix it, maybe smooth it out a little. You can also do vertically, and you can even look at it in grayscale, which again is another really important thing to do so that you can understand whether or not your image has enough contrast. And the last option that I love is having the pixel grid turn on and off. Now, pixel grid is fully customizable, just like the handy tool. So if we go up to the settings, you can actually go to, let's say, canvas. And if I want to change my guidelines here, you can click edit. And I want to change it to bright red. Ugh. Ugly color, but now you can see it better in the video. And to edit that handy tool itself, that is under features and handy joystick, and you can set everything that you want right there. One last thing I'll mention about the handy tool is that all of that stuff we were doing, like turning on the grid, flipping it, turning it black and white, that does not show up in the time lapse, which is fantastic. Let's talk about layers. There's a little button down here. Let's pull that on up. Everything that we've made so far has been on one layer, which is great until you want to move one of these planets. You move it around. Aw, man, there was nothing behind it that whole time. That's not good. So if you make a new layer, let's draw maybe an orange planet there. Now I can move this planet all around, and it doesn't mess anything up. These little images at the bottom, super useful for knowing what your layer is without having to read the name, but I do recommend renaming your layers anyway, in case you end up making an animation with a bunch of frames, and on some frames you may not have the actual image, or it might be hard to tell what it is. So it's a good practice to do it, but this is also super handy. So if you want to rename it, you actually click that and then hit rename. Brings up a box and you can name it whatever you want to call it. Orange. Now you can even create a new layer and it'll be blank, or this icon is duplicate a layer. Now we've got two oranges. Ooh. And I do constantly actually use that duplicate layer option in order to go through and make copies of things before I make any changes. Like you can actually turn a layer invisible. So on this new one, let's say I really just wanted to test out putting some green bunny ears on it. Like, oh, does that look good? Is this a green bunny rabbit now? Ugh. Maybe not, and I'll just turn that back off and turn the other one on. Yay! And of course, if you hate your layer, like my bunny rabbit, you can hit that -1 and delete it. Now you may have noticed when I was renaming, there are a ton of other options in here. You've got blend modes, alpha lock, different effects you can do. Even this color option lets you recolor the layer itself down here in the little menu thing, so you can keep track of specific layers without having to read words. Maybe you just like colors better. Now, I'm not gonna go through every single one of these options because there's a ton, but I'm just gonna show you like a realistic case study real quick for what you can do with this. We're gonna go onto this layer above my little orange here. We're gonna change the masking to clipping mask. And what that does is it actually locks you onto the layer that's underneath. So you could use that, let's say, for shading purposes. And next we're gonna go onto that again, and we are going to change the blend mode to multiply. See how it's making it a little darker? And you can even erase sections like this if you need to. Let's say maybe that's making it too dark or you don't like it. What if we turn the opacity down? Oh! So you can use this to find different ways to shade your items and your characters and objects and worlds in ways that don't screw up the layer beneath, which I think is a really handy aspect of it, because I can always just make that go invisible and bring back up what I had under there. And you can even change the opacity on your brush like we were doing earlier, and maybe I want to keep doing stuff like this to make it look even more different. A lot of different options that you can use to do your pixel art the way that you want to do it. And if we double back, we can go back into color adjustment and mess around with that until we find something that we really like. And let's say you don't want to keep track of all these different layers and you really know that you like what you have. Well, fine, go ahead and click on that orange. You can actually say merge, and now it's all one solid object. But even if it weren't, when you move just that orange around, that clipping mask layer moves with it. All right, let's talk about other useful stuff. There is an import reference image button right here. And if you've got, let's say, a drawing that you made that you want to try and trace over to make pixel art or something, well, you can just go into your photos and import something. So like here's a reference image for you. My grandma, a long time ago, crocheted me an E.T. And there he is with Baby Yoda. The nice thing about working with reference images like this is it keeps the full resolution of that reference image. So even though this is a tiny, tiny picture, it doesn't pixelize it. If I wanted to go through and trace Baby Yoda, this is a pretty quick way to get something. And then you can actually, of course, make your reference layer invisible again and kind of see how your stuff is going. Little Baby Yoda in space. You've also got a Tilemap Editor down here, which is a whole different ballgame. We're not going to go through every single thing about building out a tile map, but I'll show you the basic gist of it. And I may say tilemap and tileset interchangeably, but they mean the same thing. But we're going to create a new one with 8x8 pixels, and let's just hit create. So there's this option down here, and that actually reveals your tile map. So at first it's empty, and that's because we haven't actually put anything into these tiles. So let's see. First off, I'm gonna make invisible our beautiful space scene. And now I'm gonna start actually adding in tiles. So the first thing I do whenever I'm doing this is I just go ahead and start making a bunch of new tiles. And that's this button here. Yay! Now, none of those tiles are actually in the image yet. You have to put them there. So if you go to this little paintbrush, let's say I'm gonna grab one. There you go. See, it changes that little thing to the number that you're putting there. And you can select more than one at once. So if you do this little checkbox thingy, you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, for example, and then you can actually drag 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, etc. There's also like a erase option. So if I want to get rid of that tile, now it'll be gone. And it's kind of hard to understand what I'm doing since I haven't put anything on them. So let me just put something on them real easy. Like we're gonna do some space ground. So I'm gonna start drawing on tile number 1 here. You can see it's filled in on all these other ones where I had placed tile number 1. And let's just do some through tile 2 and 3 and maybe 4. Yeah, see, that's looking kind of like I'm building something here. And it's nice because you can just edit everything all together and build out all the elements that would make a world. And you can also like click and drag to rearrange your tiles if you need them in different locations. And it's not gonna screw up your canvas. Like I just randomly moved this thing down here to what, 23? And now it's updated up here to 23. So you can arrange your tile set however you need it. And in fact, if you even erase, let's say, a tile from the screen, let's get rid of every instance of 2, which is only this one and this one. 2 still remains on your tile set. So you can build out tiles, remove them from your canvas if you want to keep them, and you know, move along. Now let's say once you're done with your tile set, can you export it? You hit the little triple dot button here, and you can actually go to export the thing. And you can even put in some border padding and inner padding and that type of stuff. And look at that, I exported my tile set. Let's talk about animations. Now, animations use a lot of different frames, and before you create new frames, you may want to go through and decide which elements of your image are going to be able to update and which stay the same. So for example, like maybe I don't want my ground to change in any of this. So you actually can click this little double dot button here, and that links your ground between all of the different frames. I'm not going to do that with Baby Yoda because I guess he's the thing I've decided that I'm going to animate in this. Let's put another sky back here behind him. So if you want to make a new animation frame, you actually just click this little new button here, and you can see, where'd Yoda go? It's because I didn't link him and I created a new frame. But let's say if I had wanted to duplicate that frame, great. It is this button. Now, these 2 frames are identical, and this third one is the one where I had made him disappear. You can also delete frames, that minus button. And before I really do anything else, I want to mention you can use this animation feature to build out a sprite sheet for your characters. That's normally what I actually use it for, but sometimes it is good to build a whole animated scene if that's what you'd rather be doing right now. For the purposes of this animation, let's just say Baby Yoda's falling. We're going to go up here, we're going to go to precise move, I've got it set to 4 pixels, we're going to hit the down button. Great, let's make a new frame. I'm going to duplicate this, and then I'm going to move him down again. Cool. Let's make a new one. I'm gonna move him down again. Yay! Now, once you've got what you want to test out, you can actually hit play. Hey, look at that. And if you'd rather, you can scrub by grabbing this thing and just moving it between the frames. And let's say I want him to move back upward, right? So let's grab frame 2. I'm gonna grab it, I'm gonna duplicate it, and then you can actually click and drag your frames to rearrange. So I'm actually gonna grab 3 as well, grab that and move it here. And now let's play that. Woo! But let's say you don't like the speed that all this is happening. If you click on a frame, like this first one, you can change the duration right here and make it, well, whatever you want. Let's do 2. And now he hangs out there for a little bit. Yeah! You can select multiple frames at once if you'd like. You can hit this little select button here and edit a whole bunch of durations at once if you want to do that. That is where you also can link them. That tag feature is also pretty handy. So if you want to be able to label different components of an animation, that lets you do that. Let me pull up one that I've already actually finished so you can see what it looks like in action. So like with this little guy that I built, right down here you can see I've got different names for this tag. I've tagged it as idle. I've got his run tag over here and some others. So let's just watch him. Ah, cool, look at all that. The advantage of tags also is you can change it. So let's say if we want him to idle 8 times. Now he'll do this little idle 8 times and then that part stops. Now of course if I want to watch it all together, and as it all goes through, it gets to that front part, it idles there for a while, and then it moves into the next portion of that animation. Now let's talk about exporting, and don't let me lose it here, because this has actually some of my favorite features, and I'm not even kidding. Let's say I'm gonna export this guy, I'm gonna hit this little arrow up here, bunch of different options pop up. Before I even look at any of them, let's talk about the size multiplier. Now, if you're working within a game, you probably just want to keep it as 1 and let your game do the resizing. But if you're wanting to share this on social media at all, you go up to 10 or even manually if you want to type in something higher. Otherwise, it gets real blurry with the socials, and that's not good. Use trimming to crop it to whatever is actually in the picture and ignore the rest of the canvas. Let's look at the different file types that you can do up here. You can actually export it just as an individual PNG. That's just a standard image, great. You could do a GIF, so if you want a nice little looping animation, that's how you go about doing that. Sheet is a fantastic thing because it'll take every frame of this and export it as a sprite sheet. Now keep in mind, you can do any layers or all the layers that you want to work with. You can work with specific frames, like my tags that I had labeled run. Like if I do that, then I can just export these ones. That even works with a GIF, so like if I have my run animation here, yeah, and it can ignore the rest. It's fantastic. There's also this apply tags button. If any of your tags have a specific number of looping times, that's the option that you'll want to do. You can also export as a sprite or Photoshop document. Really handy if you're working with people who are working like only on PC. And time lapse, which is my favorite feature because again, that lets you show your whole process. You want to prove you're a human who drew this and not AI? Well, that's how you go about that. And that's it. Be sure to check the link in the description. If you don't already have Pixquare, you can go get it right there. Subscribe to Pixquare because they've got all the cool extra tutorials on, well, the Pixquare app. And if you dig my vibe, subscribe to Robinson Pixels, where I do all sorts of different pixel art challenges.